kind of interesting. I mean, he just doesn't give a damn about what other people think of him. What's up, Addy? My name is Joy, and in this video, I'm gonna talk about one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. Drumroll, please. Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. This book was first introduced to me by my high school English teacher. Shout out to Miss Smith. If you're also watching this book's changed my life. So back in high school, she used to ask us to work on these annotations for books that we're reading for the class. I remember all those late night hours working on them. Anyway, it was fun as long as it lasted. Thank you, Miss Kelly Smith, for bringing this amazing book to my life. Unfortunately, I lost the original copy of the graphic novel along with all my annotations when I moved back home. I had to get myself another copy so that I can make this video as a series possible. So please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. That's gonna mean a lot to me. You don't necessarily have to be a comic enthusiast to be here. I've created this channel just to talk about stuff that I like, whether it be novels, graphic novels, films, paintings, or artistic expressions of any sort. I've always had a huge appreciation for the finest work in this world that actually take time and effort to develop. And in this specific Watchmen video series, my goal is to take you on a journey with me, and we're gonna explore the world Alan Moore's created along with his three-dimensional characters that are just like us. I hope this video can bring you joy even if you've never heard of Watchmen before. So what's Watchmen about? Ever since the passing of King Act in 1977 that outlawed costumed adventuring in the United States, most costumed heroes ceased their vigilante activities and retired, except for Rorschach, who continued punishing crimes on his own. Then out of nowhere, one of these heroes, named the Comedian, was attacked and murdered at his apartment. Rorschach suspected somebody was plotting against all the masked heroes, so he reached out to them respectively, but most of them didn't take it too seriously and thought Rorschach was being paranoid. As the story goes on, more heroes have had their bad lucks. Dr. Manhattan, the superhuman, was accused of giving people cancers. He got mad and then left Earth. Ozymandias survived an attempted assassination. Rorschach was framed for Jacoby's death, who was a longtime enemy of the masked adventurers. Later, the Night Owl 2 and Silk Spectre 2 decided to dress up as costume heroes again and help their friend break out of prison. Rorschach and Night Owl 2 then dug deeper until they finally identified the person responsible for all the masks. I feel like I have to talk about the film adaptation first because many people's memories and impressions of Watchmen were based solely on the film. The Watchmen film came out in 2009 and was directed by Zack Snyder. Honestly, it was a good movie. There was no major divergence from the comic. The only main difference though would be switching the alien attack on New York City to multiple energy reactors disasters across the world, which could be a more realistic take on the original. Back to the graphic novel, there's two groups of heroes. The Minutemen came before the group of main characters in this story, which I'm just gonna briefly talk about. They are an organized group of masked adventurers who worked together with one goal in mind: crime fighting. The Silhouette, Silk Spectre, Comedian, Who Did Justice, Captain Metropolis, Night Owl, Mothman, and Dollar Bill are all members of the Minutemen. While they build the direction for where crime fighting will be headed in the future, most of them are not the focus of the story except for Comedian. It's their successors who've become the main character of Watchmen. In 1966, Captain Metropolis gathered a bunch of masked heroes at the time in a failed attempt to form an organization that would be named the Crime Busters ever since the Minutemen got disbanded in 1949. The attendees of this meeting included the Night Owl 2, Silk Spectre 2, Comedian, Ozymandias, Rorschach, and Dr. Manhattan with his girlfriend at the time, Jenny Slater. And they're the main characters throughout Watchmen. The purpose of this video essay series is to analyze some of these characters so that we can have a better understanding of them, because each one of them is a nuanced individual developed by Alan Moore, meaning they are complex human beings just like us that cannot be defined by either a hero or a villain. Now, without further ado, I'm gonna dive into the analysis on our first character on the list. Rorschach is no doubt a controversial character in this graphic novel. During the day, he's Walter Kovacs walking around New York City holding a paperboard sign that says, "The end is nigh." Basically means the world is ending. As Walter Kovacs, he's just this red-haired, freckled fellow that nobody would pay attention to on the street. The only social interactions he has are with his landlady and a news vendor from whom he buys a copy of the New Frontiersman every day. When at dusk, Kovacs becomes Rorschach. As Rorschach, he wears a trench coat with a matching fedora and a pair of striped dress pants underneath, and his face mask is made of a special fabric like a blank canvas that displays a fluid ink pattern in the center, which changes with different facial expressions. Rorschach's favorite activities include breaking into acquaintances' houses, showing up to his friend's home uninvited, and making himself feel at home by consuming his friend's groceries without asking first. And it's worth mentioning that Rorschach is probably the most unhygienic person you could ever imagine. It's like he never showers because he stinks. At one point in the story, one random guy at the bar overheard Rorschach asking the bar owner for a friend's info and was like, he must have changed his deodorant because now he's got friends. Throughout the story, he consistently seeks justice, and you can even say that he's obsessed with the idea of punishing the evil out of every possible situation. On the other hand, he's a hypocrite. His views on certain things are really twisted. For instance, Rorschach doesn't think there's a problem with the comedian raping Salad Jupiter. He even called it a moral lapsus because he respected comedian for his service to the country, like his contribution in Vietnam. So Rorschach believes comedian's military achievement would justify any other wrongdoings in his life. Also because he hates women. He hates their gods. When he was little, Rorschach was abused by his mother, who made a living through prostitution. That's how Rorschach was traumatized by femininity and later had a grudge against women in general. Apart from all this being said, Rorschach remains to be my favorite character in the Watchmen series. He plays a crucial role in the story, and I don't think Watchmen would be the same without Rorschach. Now let's dive deep into the character analysis of Rorschach, and I'm gonna tell you more about why I love this character. To start off, Rorschach is an extremist because he holds black and white morality. As Rorschach puts it in his journal, why does one death matter against so many? Because there's good and there's evil, and evil must be punished. Even in the face of Armageddon, I should not compromise in this. But there are so many deserving of retribution, and there's so little time. So he believes he's doing this solely for the purpose of seeking justice. Along his way, he doesn't care if it's gonna hurt other people. This might seem cruel and ruthless to most of us. Rorschach is obviously applying utilitarian ethics to guide his vigilante journey. This can be explained by the ends will justify the means. To give you an example, in the Watchmen comic, Happy Harry is this underworld bar Rorschach often goes to for confidential infos. When Edward Blake, aka the comedian, died, he also went in to seek information regarding Blake's death. We could tell Rorschach desperately wanted to find out who killed Blake. He's just that determined. So what did he do? He broke one guy's little and index fingers. Worst of all, he did it for nothing because none of the guys at the bar knew who killed Blake. Sounds crazy, right? All the people at the bar were terrified of Rorschach because Rorschach was this violent psychopath to them. And later on, Rorschach revealed how his costume was picked. The most prominent feature about his costume is the face mask, which was made of a special fabric. So there's a viscous fluid between two layers of latex, which is heat and pressure sensitive. So every time Rorschach changes his facial expression, the fluid also changes shape to create different ink patterns. Also, there's a psychoanalytic test called Rorschach blot test, which is often used by psychiatrists to assess their patient's perception of certain ink blot patterns. Rorschach describes the fabric as black and white, moving, changing shape, but not mixing, no gray, and very, very beautiful. This definitely reflects his morality. He cannot accept gray area and only perceives the world in either bright or dark. Toward the end of the story, Rorschach was faced with probably the most difficult choices of his life. It brings tears to my eyes every time I think about the ending. And a little spoiler alert here. So Adrian Vat, aka Ozymandias, was the one behind the whole aliens attack scheme. Shockers. When Rorschach learned about Adrian's plan, he could either comply with it, like what other characters did, or rage against it, and he chose the latter by trying to reveal it to the public and therefore putting his own life at risk. Dr. Manhattan certainly couldn't let this happen, so he stopped Rorschach on his way out. The last we could hear was Rorschach saying, "Evil must be punished. People must be told. One more body amongst foundations makes little difference. Well, what are you waiting for? Do it!" And the last we could see was Rorschach taking off his mask and turning back to Walter Kovacs, and there's tears streaming down his face. He shouted, "Do it!" one last time before being eliminated by Dr. Manhattan. Knowing that Rorschach never compromises, we can see that coming. A moment of silence for him. R.I.P. Kovacs. So, what's the meaning behind this last scene? Why did Rorschach take off his mask last minute to become Kovacs? I think he didn't want to die as Rorschach. The mask is his face and true identity. It represents what he believes in and what makes his life worth living. So without a mask, he's nobody. I think the act of taking off the mask might suggest Rorschach wanted his legacy to live on, which could be possible because he already turned in his journal to a local publisher toward the end of the story. By the way, I really like the open-ending element to Watchmen because now it's really just up to the publisher if Rorschach's efforts will ever be wasted. From the comic, we learned that Rorschach was once Walter Kovacs pretending to be Rorschach because he used to be soft on criminals. He never became Rorschach until he was involved with a horrific incident, which was explored through his psychiatric interviews with Dr. Malcolm Long while he was in prison. In this next part, I'm gonna examine the character development of Rorschach and specifically how his worldview was constructed. To make it less confusing, I'll be using the name Kovacs to address him before morphing into Rorschach. The first event that prompted him to create this alter ego was the murder of Kitty Genovese. At the age of 16, Kovacs left children's home to become a garment worker. Later, he received a customer's order, which is a dress made of new Dr. Manhattan spin-off fabric. The customer didn't collect it though because she thought it's kinda ugly. 2 years later, that same customer was raped and murdered outside of her own apartment. Many of her neighbors, in fact 40 of them, actually witnessed it, but none of them did anything to help this poor girl. Kovacs became disappointed in humanity, and when he got home that night, he made a mask out of her abandoned dress, and that's the creation of Rorschach. But bear with me here, Kovacs hasn't yet become Rorschach at this point of his life. Ever since then, he's been doing vigilante activities as Rorschach with his friends such as Night Owl 2. However, Kovacs pretending to be Rorschach had a soft approach to punishing crimes compared to the brutal Rorschach he later became. So what exactly turned him into Rorschach? 11 years after Kovacs first created Rorschach, he started an investigation on a kidnap case. In Brooklyn, New York, a 6-year-old girl was kidnapped and possibly abused. Kovacs didn't like the idea of a scared and desperate kid on her own, so he decided to intervene. He even promised the kid's parents to bring her home unharmed. Per usual, Kovacs forcefully obtained the abductor's address from onward bars, and when he got there, nobody was home, but there were 2 German shepherds fighting over a bone. Searching around the house, Kovacs could not find the girl, but he found pieces of a children's pink underwear inside an incinerator, and they were like deep knife marks on a cutting board. Naturally, he reached the conclusion that the girl had been killed and butchered by the abductor, who then fed her to his dogs. Even though it's not explicitly stated in the comic, we can tell Kovacs had reached a climax at this point, and there's no turning back. As he describes, it was Kovacs who said "mother then," muffled under latex. It was Kovacs who closed his eyes. It was Rorschach who opened them again. Later, when the abductor came back, Rorschach handcuffed him inside and burned the whole house to the ground. It was by this incident that Rorschach reached the realization that the whole idea of existence is in fact absurd. Otherwise, innocent children like her would not suffer and die tragically. He understands that humans can do terrible things to other humans. That's why he stopped having mercy on criminals. One thing that's worth mentioning is a change in Dr. Malcolm Long's attitude throughout the time he spent on Rorschach's case. At the beginning of the sessions, he was full of himself. He seemed very confident and cheerful because he really thought he could crack this case and become famous. But after he got more involved, friction started to come up between him and his wife. It's mostly because he was really focused with work and not able to keep up with his personal life. The more time Dr. Long spent with Rorschach, the more disturbed he became. When he first met Rorschach, he thought Rorschach had always been conditioned with a negative worldview. But by the time he heard all the past experience from Rorschach, I think he changed his mind. He no longer appeared to be cocky or contented with everything in his life. He even confessed at the end of the chapter that life was indeed meaningless. So Rorschach might have shattered Dr. Long's illusions about life. It's kind of interesting because I've seen Rorschach been described as a nihilist online. I don't necessarily think Rorschach is a nihilist. For anyone who doesn't know what nihilism means, the definition of nihilism is the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. So the thing about Rorschach is he believes the world is morally blank and existence has no pattern or meaning. Yet he's been giving his best effort to save the world, and he definitely has clear moral values. As he puts it in his journal, nothing is insoluble, nothing is hopeless, not while there's life. I think that's what I love the most about Rorschach. He always stays true to himself by fighting against crimes in the face of adversity. That would also be the reason why Rorschach has a bad personal hygiene. I mean, he just doesn't give a damn about what other people think of him. Thank you guys for making this far, and don't forget to support my channel. Like and subscribe. Comment below with your thoughts on Rorschach or Watchmen in general. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.